I woke up to the glare of my phone screen before sunlight even filtered through my curtains. 4 new voicemail alerts, 8 unread texts, and a notification blinking on my Instagram app like a ticking time bomb. It was Monday morning, and I was already running late for the Kowalski & Company digital audit that had dominated my thoughts since Friday's late-night client call. But something in the frantic buzz of notifications felt different. Urgent in a way that had nothing to do with campaign metrics or engagement rates. Dragging myself to a sitting position, I opened my messages. The first text was from my friend and roommate Marin. All your channels show user not found. What the hell? My heart lurched. I flipped to my analytics dashboard. My clients' accounts were running fine, sprinkled with morning impressions. But my sister's flagship influencer profile at Valentina Monroe Official was gone. Vanished. No trace. I stifled a gasp. My sister, Valentina Monroe, was one of the fastest rising names in lifestyle and wellness media. Her polished grid, her morning routine reels, the occasional brand collab that paid 6 figures, all of that propelled by careful strategy, millions of followers, and our shared history. Just last month, I'd helped her pivot from fashion tutorials to mindful living content, boosting her reach by 23%. We'd celebrated over cookies and coffee, toasting to her future. How did someone wipe her entire online presence overnight? My coffee table trembled as I slid my laptop out of the bag. I opened Slack with one trembling hand. On the #Valentina-team channel, her social media managers were pouring in messages. Backquote. Veronica, has anyone heard from Cassie? Julian, the brand safety alert went off at 3:02 a.m., then everything went dark. Priya, I tried to DM Valentina, message undeliverable. Backquote. I swallowed hard, they needed answers, and right now I had none. But I couldn't let the team run wild with panic. I clicked on the group video call link and spoke up before they turned on their cameras. This is Cassandra Monroe. I'm Valentina's sister and digital strategist. I'm here to help. Silence. Then Veronica spoke, voice low and uncertain. Cassie, we thought you and Valentina. I cut in. I've been out of the loop since Friday, but we'll fix this. First, I need to know what happened exactly. Julian, you saw the alert? He nodded, jaw clenched. Somebody forced a full deletion. It took down every post, every story highlight, wiped her followers. It's as if the account never existed. My stomach twisted. A forced deletion meant someone had credentials, someone who knew the reset button, and at 3:02 a.m., Valentina should have been asleep. She trusted only a handful of people with her login, who betrayed her. Before the meeting could spiral further, I clicked off video. I needed to breathe. I pulled out my notebook, handwritten scribbles, marketing notes, hashtags to test. My mind raced. If someone hijacked her account, they must have targeted her credentials. My sister wasn't careless. She followed every security protocol I'd drilled into her. 2-factor authentication, rotating passwords, device lockouts. But we both skipped one crucial step. An emergency recovery plan documented somewhere outside our heads. My pulse thudded as I dialed our mutual friend and legal counsel, Andre. Cassie, what's happening? His voice crackled through the line. Her entire platform is gone, Andre. I need to pull the logs, file DMCA complaints, any takedown reversal. Can you start that process? He sighed. I'll get our team on it, but this could take days to reverse, if it's even possible. You need a plan for tomorrow's launch without her main channel. A launch. Valentina was slated to drop her wellness app teaser at noon. Without her social presence, that rollout would be a disaster. Brands would call, sponsors would panic. We needed a contingency. I ended the call and refocused. I logged into our shared Google Drive, pulling up the backup assets. High-res photos, ad copy, video drafts, everything we had stored for the app reveal. My strategy had always been to recycle and repurpose content across platforms. Now I had to improvise on the fly. By 7:30, I was back on the group call with her team. My voice was steady, even if my hands shook. Here's the plan. will relaunch her presence on an auxiliary channel at Valentinum_backup that we prepped last winter and never used. We'll deploy the app teaser there. Simultaneously, we'll coordinate an email blast to her mailing list and our network of press contacts. We'll lean on LinkedIn and Twitter for outreach. It's not ideal, but it'll buy us enough time for account restoration. I outlined the execution timeline, delegating tasks to each team member. They nodded, hungry for direction. When we wrapped at 8:15, I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of responsibility. The morning sun had broken through my window by then, illuminating the living room. My phone buzzed, an incoming FaceTime from Valentina. My heart hammered as I answered. She appeared on screen, hair tousled, eyes red. In the dim light of her apartment, she looked small, shaken, nothing like the confident star I'd always known. "Cassie," she whispered, voice cracked, "everything's gone." I swallowed back my own panic. "Val, breathe. We've already initiated the backup channel. Your launch will happen, your audience will know. I swear I'll bring you back." Tears glistened in her eyes. I trusted them. "I know." I reached out to tap the screen, though I couldn't bridge the distance. "We'll find out who did this, and we'll come back stronger." Her gaze lingered on me, searching. "Promise?" "Promise." I ended the call and sat in silence, the weight of dawn pressing against my chest. This was personal now, beyond metrics and branding, beyond campaign deadlines. Someone had tried to erase my sister's identity, her voice, and I was going to fight back. I stood up, stretching my legs. Tomorrow was D-Day for her app launch, but tonight I had to act. I grabbed my coat and headed out into the crisp morning air, phone clutched in my hand. I had a roster of cyber investigators meeting me at the cafe on 5th and Oak at 9. I needed to secure forensic logs, trace the IP address that killed her account, identify footprints. I reached the cafe just as the door chimed behind me. My phone rang. It was the lead investigator, Elena Ramirez. I answered with a steady voice. "Cassandra Monroe?" she asked, glancing at her laptop screen. "Yes. You have the data?" Her eyes flicked up. "It's bad. The breach came from an internal device. Someone with admin privileges. We're talking someone on Valentina's own team." I froze, the words echoing like a verdict. Not an external hacker, but an insider betrayal. "That can't be right," I breathed. "We're pulling more logs," Elena said, "but initial IP ranges match known devices from your sister's LA office." My mind raced. My sister's inner circle. Who would do this, and why? I looked around the cafe. Morning rush hour, baristas hustling, the smell of espresso in the air. Everybody here, oblivious to the digital carnage that defined my life an hour ago. It felt surreal. Elena closed her laptop. "I'll update you when we have more. Until then, stick to the backup plan. Your sister's launch depends on it." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I ended the call and exhaled slowly. One twist of fate and my sister's world was turned upside down. But I wasn't just her sister. I was her strategist, her backup plan, her anchor. I squared my shoulders, pressed my lips into a thin line, and steeled myself for what came next. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. My brain was a static storm of timelines, passwords, analytics, and suspicion. The numbers still hadn't recovered. The placeholder account we were using, at Valentinum_backup, had picked up some traction, thanks to a flurry of DMs and emergency crossposts from partners, but it was a pale shadow of what Valentina had built over years. And worse, none of it made sense. Someone close had flipped the kill switch, not a rogue fan or a disgruntled troll. It was an insider with credentials, access, and malice. I kept going back to the names, the logins I'd helped create, the sessions I'd reviewed. Who had the motive? Who wanted her gone? The chill of betrayal ran deeper than just business. This was personal, and I knew it in my bones. And if it was personal, it meant whoever did it didn't just want to ruin her, they wanted her erased. The sun was rising by the time I rejoined Valentina's team in our shared Slack space. I dropped into the group call as they were debriefing overnight traffic. Julian gave me a tired thumbs up. Veronica looked pale. Priya, wide-eyed. "Any updates from the forensic team?" I asked, sipping lukewarm coffee. Veronica cleared her throat. "Ramirez sent logs. 4 IPs accessed the master account within a 10-minute window. 3 we've confirmed. Me, Julian, and the backup server bot. The 4th one, it's still being verified." Julian leaned forward. "But here's the catch. The deletion wasn't done manually. It was triggered via a master protocol, a kill script." I blinked. "She had a kill script?" "She did," Veronica said slowly. "We all signed off on it after the influencer targeting breach last year. The idea was, in case of a hijack, one admin could erase the entire public profile, wipe everything, and restart safely." I pressed a hand to my forehead. "And who had that clearance?" Veronica hesitated. 4 people. Valentina, you, Julian, and one more. Her assistant, Bryn. Bryn. The name struck like a snap of ice. Valentina's longest-serving employee, her right hand. Sweet, punctual, loyal, or so I thought. I'd always been wary of how much power Bryn held, how often she played middlewoman between me and my sister. But I never thought she'd use that power to disappear Valentina overnight. "Where is she?" I asked quietly. "Went off-grid Saturday night," Priya said. "Didn't show up for her Sunday check-in, no responses, her phone's disconnected." "Did anyone contact her family?" "Her mom says she's at a quote 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 no tech allowed." My jaw clenched. Convenient. I ended the call and immediately dialed Elena Ramirez. She picked up on the first ring. "Bryn Turner," I said. "Trace everything." "I'm already on it," Elena replied. "She withdrew $15,000 in cash from her account late Friday. That was 12 hours before the deletion." "She's running." "Yes, but we'll find her." As I hung up, a sharp knock rattled my apartment door. I froze. Another knock. Cautiously, I opened it and found a courier holding a plain white envelope. No logo, just my name, printed in bold black ink. "Delivery for Cassandra Monroe," he said. "Signature, please." I scribbled my name and took the envelope. He disappeared without another word. I closed the door and ripped it open. Inside, a single flash drive. I stared at it. No return address, no note. My breath caught. Was this from Bryn? Or someone else trying to help? Or Hurst's? I crossed the room, inserted the drive into a secure port on my backup laptop, and waited. One folder, titled simply, Redemption. Inside, 10 video files. I clicked the first. Valentina's face filled the screen, shot from a hidden angle. Her in a green room, probably at a brand shoot last week. She looked exhausted, face bare, voice low. "I feel like I'm losing myself. Bryn says my numbers are down, but I think she's lying. Cassie would tell me the truth, but Bryn keeps saying Cassie's too emotional, that I need to cut ties. I don't know what to believe anymore." My stomach dropped. I played the second video. Bryn's voice. Not her face, just audio. "Delete the emergency backups too. Cassie's too clever for her own good. If she finds the vault, she'll recover everything." I gasped. She'd been plotting this for weeks. Every file confirmed it. Bryn gaslighting Valentina, poisoning her trust in me, setting up the conditions for a digital coup. And it had worked, until it didn't. Until Valentina's fear turned to doubt, and she'd tried to warn someone. The 10th file was a voice message. Valentina, whispering. "Cassie, if you get this, it means I was right. Bryn betrayed me. Everything is stored in the cloud vault. You'll know the password. You always do. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Please bring me back." I shut the laptop. I did know the password. It was the name of our childhood dog. I logged into the hidden vault I'd helped set up years ago, back when Valentina was still a micro-influencer juggling 3 clients and an Etsy store. We'd never used it. But now, there it was. Tens of gigabytes of data. Old drafts, scheduling scripts, raw edits, contracts, even screenshots of conversations with brands that proved her reach and influence. I exhaled. We could rebuild. But I didn't want to rebuild. I wanted to own the platform that nearly got her erased. By noon, I drafted a 3-tier recovery and expansion plan. Step 1, restore all possible content. Step 2, launch an independent hosting site with her name, bypassing platform limitations. Step 3, reassign her social team and place them under my direct leadership. They didn't know yet. I joined the afternoon team sync and waited for the chatter to settle. I'm restructuring the team, I announced. Heads turned. I'm now acting director of strategy and operations. You'll report to me. This is non-negotiable. Julian narrowed his eyes. Valentina hasn't approved this. She will. I dropped a secure link in the chat. That's the proof of Bryn's betrayal and Valentina's directive. Veronica clicked it. Her jaw fell open. Oh my God! Priya was silent, trembling. Julian leaned back, visibly rattled. I'm not here for power plays, I said. I'm here to protect what we built and what Valentina nearly lost. Veronica spoke softly. What do you want us to do? Take this personal. Because it is. We're going to relaunch Valentina stronger than ever. But we're also going to build something bigger. A media team that doesn't answer to algorithm whims. A brand that's untouchable. They stared at me. Then, slow nods. Priya whispered, I'm in. So was Julian. And so began the rebirth. I spent the next 36 hours locked in my apartment, alternating between fury and fire. I called old friends in PR, booked an emergency interview slot on a rising podcast, drafted statements, restored backup footage, even recorded a short video for Valentina herself to post the moment she was ready. Meanwhile, Elena sent updates. Bryn booked a one-way flight to Malta, she said. She paid in cash, but the airport cameras got her. I filed notice with international agencies. Can we stop her? I asked. Not yet, but we'll catch her. I stared at a still frame of Bryn's face from the security cam footage. She looked calm, cold, satisfied. It wasn't over, but neither was I. The next morning, Valentina posted from the backup channel, her face raw, voice strong. To everyone asking where I went, my name was nearly stolen, but I have my voice, and thanks to my sister, I have my platform. This is only the beginning. The comments exploded. By noon, she was trending. Brands reached out again. Fans poured in support. Sponsors offered double the rates to be part of her comeback arc. And behind it all, me. I was building something bigger than redemption. I was building a legacy. Because sometimes, the only way to reclaim your power is to take theirs. And I wasn't done. Not even close. The sound of wind battering the window was the only thing that reminded me time was still moving. 3 days had passed since Valentina's reemergence, and the internet had turned her into a phoenix. Hashtags bloomed overnight. Hashtag Valentina returns. Hashtag sister save. Hashtag digital betrayal. BuzzFeed wanted an exclusive. Vogue sent preliminary questions. Her mailing list subscribers surged by 60,000 in 48 hours. But numbers didn't stop nightmares. I kept dreaming I was typing, only to realize the keyboard had melted. I'd wake up clutching my phone, breath shallow, heart pounding. The fear didn't come from failure. It came from the knowledge that we had only just survived the first attack. Bryn had vanished. Malta confirmed she'd never boarded her connecting flight. And now she was a ghost with admin-level secrets and no shortage of motivation. Elena's forensic team had traced partial cryptocurrency transfers linked to a shell company tied to influencer sabotage rings. Our theory was simple. Bryn had sold access, sold strategy maps, possibly even client databases. And I couldn't tell Valentina. Not yet. She was still too raw. So I bore it, alone, with every ping of my laptop, every brand inquiry, every podcast request, my inbox a minefield. Meanwhile, I was running 3 accounts, coordinating her PR strategy, managing 6 contractors, preparing the rollout of a private server, and ghostwriting her post-trauma essay that the cut was now bidding for. Marin, my roommate, found me asleep at the kitchen table 2 nights in a row. The third morning, she slammed a protein shake beside me. If you don't delegate something, Cassie, your heart will quit before Bryn gets caught. I can't afford to breathe yet. Yes, you can. Let someone else answer the damn press emails. She wasn't wrong, but no one else knew how to say no with teeth. I opened Slack and summoned the team to a live call. We're splitting the core ops team into 3 cells, I said as soon as the video loaded. 1 for media inquiries, 1 for infrastructure rebuilding, 1 for community engagement. I'll lead the infrastructure group directly. Julian, you're taking the media front. He blinked. Me? You're articulate and calm under pressure. That's what I need out front. He sat back. All right, what's the message? That this comeback isn't a gimmick, it's a reclamation. I ended the call and leaned back, pressing my hands over my eyes. The weight lifted slightly, just enough for me to exhale without shaking. Hours later, I was walking the city blocks near our old content studio. It was the first time I'd gone outside without a laptop bag since the sabotage. The wind was sharp, the people blurry, and my mind was thudding with one persistent question. Why now? What did Bryn gain by doing it then? Before the launch? Before Valentina's book pre-announcement? Before our Netflix pitch? It was strategically sloppy, which didn't match her track record. Unless she wasn't working alone. Back in my apartment, I dug through a digital vault I hadn't opened in over a year, our internal risk assessment files. Back when I managed influencer PR for multiple clients, I ran predictive loyalty tests on staff. Paranoia, some called it. I called it survival. And I'd flagged 2 unusual partnerships from Bryn's previous gigs. One name came up twice. Martin Days. Tech consultant. PR fixer. Formerly blacklisted for non-compete violations. He'd been hired briefly by a firm that merged with our last brand sponsor. If he had approached Bryn with an offer she couldn't refuse, that would explain her timing. I needed more. Elena texted at 2:03 a.m. Times E. Found encrypted file dump tied to Valentina's archive. Possibly planted by Bryn. Sending now. My inbox lit up. I opened the file. Hundreds of messages between Bryn and Martin. Codes, strategy logs, a detailed takedown plan. My chest tightened. They called it Symes Project Erasure. They'd mapped out not just Valentina's deletion, but secondary strategies in case of recovery, targeting audience trust, undermining credibility, spreading false PR leaks. And phase 2 was already in motion. I called Julian, who sounded half asleep. We're under a second wave. What? I forwarded him the documents. He whistled. This is warfare. Digital warfare, I replied. And it's just beginning. By morning, 2 suspicious blog posts had gone live accusing Valentina of faking the hack for attention. They used blurred screenshots, misquoted statements, fake insider sources. Our email blast to sponsors was delayed by spam filters. I traced the source, external signal jamming scripts on 3 relay servers. Someone was intentionally sabotaging our backend. I deployed emergency patches. I looped in our cloud service provider. I even restructured our DNS. Then I called Valentina. I had to. Her voice cracked as she answered. Cassie? We're being hit again. PR sabotage, scripted interference. And it's coming from someone named Martin Days. A pause. I know that name. I blinked. You do? He DM'd me last year, wanted to reposition my brand into crypto, said he could multiply my numbers by 3. I ignored him, he got weird. Pushy, I blocked him. Now the pattern made sense. He hadn't gotten over it. He'd found another way in. I clenched my jaw. We'll expose him. Valentina was quiet. Cass, you've done enough. Not even close. There was silence, then her voice, barely above a whisper. Why do you keep saving me? Because I remember. Us sitting on the rooftop as kids, her braiding my hair while telling me how she'd own her own company one day. Because when I was a ghost in high school, she was my shield. Because even when she cut me off during the brand deal debacle 2 years ago, I still knew she loved me, just didn't know how to show it. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, because I can. That night, I launched a private Discord server, Valentina Inner Circle. No trolls, no bots. Just our most loyal fans, screened by email invite. Within 12 hours, 3,000 joined. By the weekend, 20,000. I hosted a live AMA. I didn't hide my name. I didn't play PR games. This isn't just about one woman. This is about what happens when women build empires and people come to burn them down. The chat exploded. And then, something strange happened. A user named *DaylightMirror* joined the server anonymously and dropped a screen recording. It showed Bryn and Martin at a bar, their voices audible. "She's smart," Martin was saying. "She'll rebuild, so we'll stay close, find a weak point." "She trusts too much," Bryn replied. "Especially Cassie, always did." My blood ran cold. I cross-verified the audio with Elena's software, 99% match. We had them. And now, it was our turn to move. Tomorrow, we'd drop the footage publicly, with context, with receipts. Let the world see who tried to dismantle a life. I watched the sunrise from my balcony, coffee in hand, exhausted, but alive. The fire wasn't over. It had just changed hands. And I was holding the match. The video dropped at exactly 8 a.m. Eastern, 72 seconds of leaked footage, tagged with 3 words: trust, betrayal. Exposure? It wasn't theatrical. No music, no jump cuts, no filter overlays. Just raw truth. Time-stamped, geotagged, watermarked by our internal forensics team, and authenticated via blockchain-stamped metadata for the skeptics. The internet caught fire. Within minutes, hashtags like #ExposeMartinDays and #ByBryn were trending across Twitter, TikTok, and even LinkedIn. Influencers who once side-eyed Valentina during the post-wipe ambiguity now issued full-throated support. Her following, once fragile and fragmented after the incident, roared back with vengeance. Screenshots turned into TikToks, into Instagram carousels, into hour-long breakdowns from digital rights lawyers and branding experts. Valentina was no longer just an influencer. She was a symbol of how quickly women in digital spaces can be erased when trust is weaponized. But while the world talked, I moved. Behind the scenes, I expanded the infrastructure. We scaled the Discord community server from 20,000 to 50,000 members in 3 days, added moderators, encrypted the invite process, and partnered with a cybersecurity firm to offer free 2-factor authentication webinars to all of Valentina's followers. Every follower she lost, she earned back twice over. Not just fans, defenders. And yet, every gain came with a shadow. On Tuesday night, an unknown number texted me a screenshot of my own apartment building's exterior, a grainy image, taken from across the street. "You're next." Tass. I stood at my window, staring down into the dark sidewalk, lit only by the street lamps and the occasional blue flicker of passing cars. Was it Bryn? Martin? Some third party? I immediately activated location protection protocols. Shut off Wi-Fi, powered down all Alexa devices, replaced my router. I looped in Elena, who escalated to local cybercrime units. But I didn't sleep. Not for hours. Just paced my hallway with a cold blade of anxiety in my chest. Valentina called at 1:22 a.m. Her voice was soft but clear. "I saw the video. Cassie, you exposed them." I had to. I wanted to be the one to do it. "You will be," I said, "but you needed to be protected. You still do." She sighed. "I'm done being protected. I want to fight." And something shifted in her voice, a grit I hadn't heard in weeks. "I'm ready," she said. So we launched the Reclaim Project. It started as a single Instagram post, Valentina in a white hoodie, no makeup, standing in front of a plain background. I was nearly erased. And I'm not the only one. It happens every day. To women, to small creators, to voices too bold for the system. This is for them, for us. The post racked up 10 million views in 48 hours. We followed with a digital toolkit, templates for influencers to back up their data, tips to navigate sabotage, and a free PDF titled, How to Not Disappear, Digital Self-Defense for Creators. Outlets picked it up. NPR, Mashable, even The Guardian. Sponsors circled back, and this time the contracts were on our terms. Meanwhile, I continued digging. Elena and I traced Bryn's last known IP to a port in Palermo. But the signal dead-ended. My gut told me she wasn't done. Not yet. And the timing of the text message confirmed she was trying to rattle me, pull me into defensive mode. I refused to flinch. Instead, I leaned in harder. I hired a private investigator in Europe, Anouk, a data breach specialist with a knack for tracking high-level ghosts. Within 2 days, Anouk confirmed what we feared. Bryn wasn't acting alone, and she wasn't hiding. She was working. Under a new alias. For a digital marketing firm in Berlin. A firm tied to shadow branding, a new, underground practice of tearing down influencers from the inside for rival gain. They didn't just sabotage, they repositioned narratives, creating fake accounts to slowly manipulate audience perception and sow distrust. Martin wasn't just a rogue consultant. He was a broker, and Bryn had become his star client. I showed the report to Valentina. She sat silently, scrolling through the screenshots, the timeline. I knew she was angry, she said, but I never thought she hated me. She doesn't hate you, I said. She envies you. Hating would require distance. She studied you, memorized you. She wanted to become you. We stared at the screen together. Then Valentina straightened. We're taking this global. What do you mean? Publicly, fully, not just the video. We're telling the whole story. I'll do a long-form, sit-down interview. Something raw, unfiltered. No teleprompter, no makeup team, no editing. Just me. I paused. It's risky. They could sue. Let them. The receipts speak louder than their lawyers. So we planned it. 2 cameras. Natural light. 1 chair. Valentina sat before the lens and told the story start to finish. From her first viral post, to the betrayal, to the deletion, to the fight to reclaim her voice. It dropped on YouTube. No ads, no sponsors. 32 minutes of vulnerability and fire. It shattered our records. 20 million views in 1 week. The comment section became a confessional for others who'd been betrayed, sabotaged, sidelined. Artists, advocates, creators. We started getting messages from women in Romania, Brazil, Kenya, Canada. Stories of managers stealing logins, agents locking out talent, spouses weaponizing platforms in divorce. The Reclaim project became international. And the final blow? Anouk sent a recording, Martin, in a call with a recruiter bragging about influencer neutralization tactics. We leaked it. And the firm in Berlin collapsed under public pressure. Bryn was outed. Interpol issued a digital harassment notice. Martin's consulting license was revoked in the EU. And Valentina? She was profiled in Time. The headline, You Can't Cancel What You Didn't Build. And me? I sat in the back row of the press conference, unnoticed, watching my sister take the mic and command a room full of people who once whispered about her downfall. She looked out at the cameras, the lights, and said, This isn't a comeback, this is a rewrite. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. Just 1 word. Tokes, respect. I smiled, knowing who sent it. It didn't change anything. Because the story wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming the pen. And now, it was in our hands. The day after the Time profile went live, my inbox exploded. Everyone wanted to talk to Valentina. Everyone wanted a quote, a comment, a feature, a panel appearance. But what they didn't realize, what no one could possibly understand unless they had stood in the storm with us, was that we didn't just want to be heard. We wanted to change the entire conversation. And we had the blueprint now. Valentina and I sat at opposite ends of her new studio space, a loft in downtown Brooklyn with floor-to-ceiling windows, old wooden floors, and one long table between us, scattered with laptops, notepads, and 3 half-drunk oat lattes. The walls were still bare. The ceiling fan spun lazily above the quiet click of keyboards. She was reviewing transcripts. I was rebuilding her internal analytics dashboard from scratch. "This story took us a long time," she said suddenly, softly. "If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story." She looked up and smiled, mocking the influencer call-to-action voice. I laughed, finally exhaling. "Careful, or I'll make you do the intros for our podcast." She blinked. "Wait, are we launching one?" I paused. "We are now." And just like that, Deru Shitrewer 8 Knowers Fame, Deru Sower Arours Tost, was born. We already had the listeners, the audience, the platform. What we needed was a space to own the narrative completely. No middlemen. No platforms with the power to erase us. We chose a decentralized hosting service, encrypted episode archives, and community-owned monetization through micro-memberships. Episode 1. The Day They Tried to Delete Me. Valentina opened with her voice, shaky but clear. "You've heard the headlines, but you haven't heard me." We recorded it raw, no script, just conversation. Her pain, her fear, my rage. Our laughter, even, when we looked back on the absurdity of building an empire with coffee spoons and hashtags. It went live on a Friday. By Monday, it was #1 in 3 countries. And the ripple effects? Unpredictable. Creators started reaching out not for brand collabs, but for security advice. Agents wanted to sponsor, but under our terms. Women who ran shelters emailed us saying their clients were building online businesses again, inspired by Valentina's survival. One night, we got a message from a girl in Estonia, 17. Her older brother locked her out of her coding YouTube channel after she refused to let him take over. She'd seen Valentina's post, followed our toolkit, got her account back, and was now mentoring others in her school. Valentina cried when she read that. "It's real," she said, voice choked. "It's actually doing something." But behind the highs, we knew the shadows weren't gone. Bryn had resurfaced. Not directly, not publicly, but in the patterns. Fake accounts kept cropping up. Pseudo-legal threats were being emailed to smaller creators who reposted our resources. Trollbots flooded our Discord server with spam. Someone even bought ad space for a fake reclaimed podcast, one designed to confuse and redirect our audience. It was guerrilla warfare now. And if they wanted a war, they'd get one. I reached out to a group I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, the Wavelength Network. A loosely affiliated collective of female digital strategists, whistleblowers, ethical hackers, and rogue developers. We'd once worked together when a friend's fitness startup was infiltrated by corporate spies. After that, most of us went underground. But I still had the private key. When I dropped the encrypted request, 3 avatars lit up. Shimes-esque, Near Shield, asterisk, Mactor cleared, what's the mission? Fractal Girl, asterisk, asterisk, tell me it's not Martin Days again. Truckasier Drays _ real, asterisk, asterisk, worse. Martin, Bryn, coordinated. Ghost accounts, real damage. They didn't hesitate. In 72 hours, they mapped the entire digital network of bots, fake sites, and misdirection URLs tied to the attack campaigns. We traced them to a shell holding in Lisbon. From there, funds were funneled through an anonymous crypto mixer. But then came the break. One of the shell sites hadn't properly anonymized their hosting metadata. A junior dev had reused a personal domain. It linked back to Bryn's new alias. We finally had her. We gathered the evidence, cross-referenced everything, encrypted it, and prepared for public release. But Valentina stopped me. "I don't want to destroy her," she said. "I want to end this without becoming her." I stared at her. "You're allowed to protect yourself." "I am, but let's not burn the whole world down in the process." So instead of a digital exposé, we went personal. Valentina wrote a letter. Open, honest, devastating. To the followers, to the doubters, even to Bryn. It ended with this. I was hurt by someone I trusted, but I won't return that pain. I will, however, protect myself, and I will help others do the same. This isn't a feud, this is a firewall. Times. We released it on our site and podcast simultaneously. It didn't go viral. It went nuclear. Screenshots flooded the internet. Celebrities reposted. Psychologists weighed in. Survivors of betrayal shared their own letters, their own versions of *a firewall. We knew then this wasn't just about Valentina. It never had been. It was about every woman who had been gaslit in business, ghosted in collaboration, erased from her own story. And they were ready to reclaim it. We launched Taish the Firewall Grant a week later. Small micro-grants to help creators rebuild after sabotage. Digital, legal, emotional. Within 48 hours, we received 7,000 applications. 3 weeks after that, we were invited to speak at South by Southwest. I stood backstage with Valentina before our panel, watching the auditorium fill. She was nervous. I wasn't. Remember when we were kids? I whispered. And you made me do your pretend interviews in the mirror? She laughed. Yeah, you always ask the tough questions. I grinned. Still do. She squeezed my hand. Thank you, Cassie. For what? For not giving up on me, even when I blocked you. My heart caught. You weren't the one who blocked me, I said. She tilted her head. You were just trying to survive in a system built to use us up. I never blamed you. The lights dimmed, our names were announced. We walked out side by side, and the crowd stood. Not for an influencer, not for a strategist, but for two women who refused to disappear. The story wasn't finished, but the silence was. We'd broken it. And now the world was listening. After our South by Southwest panel, things accelerated beyond anything I could have predicted. The audience had been electric. Every seat filled, the crowd standing, cameras raised like torches. But what happened after Oceanics was what rewrote our reality. It wasn't just the media coverage, though every major outlet ran a version of the same headline, The Sisters Who Rewrote Influence. It wasn't the sudden surge of investment offers or the flood of agents trying to attach themselves to, quote, the Monroe brand. It was the fact that, for the first time, Valentina and I sat across from each other without apology. She leaned back in our hotel room armchair, heels kicked off, phone face down, and said, I don't know if I want to go back. To what? I asked. The version of this where I smile for strangers and sell tea. I don't drink. I sat beside her, legs tucked under me. Then don't. Her brow furrowed. But that was the whole thing. Maybe it was, but it doesn't have to be anymore. Silence. A rare, golden quiet between us. Then, softly, what if we built something different? My throat tightened. I was hoping you'd say that. That night, we ordered takeout and sketched on napkins like we used to do when we were kids planning fake businesses. But this wasn't fake, it wasn't cute or ironic. It was real. We were two women with a platform, a community, and a mission to change the digital space for everyone who felt disposable inside it. We called it Root, a digital collective. Not a platform, not a brand, a new ecosystem. Root would house tools, real open-source resources for creators to protect, grow, and reclaim their spaces. It would include a crisis hotline for creators under attack. It would fund microloans for creators recovering from sabotage. It would launch a mentorship tree, pairing rising creators with those who'd survived public storms. By morning, we had the framework. By week's end, we had a waiting list. The media kept calling, but we stopped answering. We weren't ignoring them, we were building. The next challenge was infrastructure. If Root was going to be real, we needed developers, lawyers, cybersecurity experts. And we needed money. That's when Gabrielle Lee called. She was a venture capitalist, once dubbed the Velvet Hammer by Forbes. She'd made her fortune funding platforms that went from laughable to legendary. And she'd seen our South by Southwest talk. Her message was short. You're not asking for money, but I'm offering it anyway. Call me. We did. Gabrielle didn't talk like most investors. No pitch deck, no push to scale, no talk of quarterly metrics. She listened. Then she said something I'll never forget. You don't need 1 million followers. You need 1,000 people who won't let you disappear. You've got that. Everything else is logistics. She wired $1.2 million in seed capital by the end of the week. And just like that, Root went from idea to entity. The first week we launched RootWatch, a browser extension that flagged suspicious follower activity, login anomalies, and unverified collaborations. The second week, we launched RootTree, the mentorship map, with over 300 applicants. And by the third week, we were hosting digital town halls. But with visibility came backlash. Valentina received a fake cease and desist letter, accusing her of violating a defamation clause tied to a contract she never signed. My LinkedIn account was shadow banned for 48 hours after we published our digital labor manifesto. And then someone tried to dox our lead developer. We pushed back. Publicly. And the community backed us harder than ever. But behind the scenes, the cracks started to show. Valentina was tired. Not just emotionally, but existentially tired. One night, as we sat on the floor of our office folding "Creator Rights Are Human Rights" tote bags for an event, she said, I don't want to be the face of this forever. You don't have to be, I said. But people only care because of the story, my story, that I got erased and came back. They cared first because of that, I said. Now they care because they know you're building something that matters. She stared at the floor. What if I let them down? You won't, because we're not building this, Wesu. We're building it. Come time am I with you? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Still, she kept showing up. And then, the tipping point arrived. A rising creator, one we'd mentored quietly through RootTree, had their channel hijacked and deleted by a former manager. This time, Root wasn't caught flat-footed. We activated a team in less than 3 hours, coordinated a digital forensics takedown order, launched a rallying cry across platforms, and raised $20,000 in emergency funds to rebuild the creator's life. By midnight, the story had been picked up by BuzzFeed. By morning, it had turned into a movement. We'd built something bigger than any one of us. And the internet, at least the corner of it we were touching, felt a little less dangerous. A little more ours. Later that week, Valentina took me aside. I think it's time I take a step back. I nodded. Okay. You're not surprised? No, I knew it the night we ate pad thai and sketched logos on napkins. She smiled. Will you keep going? I have to. So she did it with grace. She posted a video. Not dramatic, just her, soft-lit, candid. I was nearly erased once. I fought back, and I found something worth protecting. I'm not disappearing, I'm just taking a breath. Root is in good hands. The comments poured in. And I stood behind the screen, watching her say goodbye. Not to the movement, but to the version of herself that had once thought she had to smile through sabotage just to stay visible. We launched a board for Root, real governance, shared leadership. And I stepped into the role I never thought I'd want, executive director. Not because I needed power, but because I finally understood what it meant to hold it. Not for yourself, but for everyone still trying to be heard. I wasn't Valentina's backup plan anymore. I wasn't the strategist behind the scenes. I was the story now. And the pen was mine. We opened the new Root headquarters in a former newspaper building on the Lower East Side. Once a relic of ink and presses, now redesigned with reclaimed wood, old printing plates as wall art, and a neon pink sign over the entrance that read, "Your story is not a trend." It was poetic, really. A place that used to print the stories others told, now sheltering the people learning to write their own. I stood in the middle of the main floor, watching the morning sunlight slant through the tall windows, and thought about how far we'd come since Valentina's account had vanished from the internet like a ghost swallowed by silence. That silence had become a roar. Root now had over 800 verified creators in its global network, with 3 active branches in New York, Berlin, and Nairobi. Our town halls had evolved into creator tribunals, spaces where sabotage could be exposed, contracts dissected, agency misconduct named aloud. It wasn't performative, it was restorative, and the fear that had once kept so many of us silent had turned into a vocabulary of resistance, of recovery, of rules we were writing ourselves. But not everything grew with grace. The more visible we became, the louder the pushback. Tech bros began to label us as too radical. Legacy talent agencies warned their clients not to associate with, quote, activist brands. One former sponsor posted anonymously that we were a feminism cult dressed as a SaaS tool. I laughed when I saw that one. Then I got to work. We started publishing a series called Creator Cases, Real Stories, Anonymized and Verified, of sabotage in the influencer world. No clickbait, no revenge, just truth. The impact was immediate. After the 4th story, a major agency restructured its contract template. After the 6th, a lawsuit was dropped after public scrutiny reached critical mass. And after the 10th, we got an encrypted email. Subject line: Tries, I'm in trouble, please help. Attached were screenshots. A woman named Reiko, a food creator from Kyoto with over 2 million followers, had discovered her boyfriend manager had been siphoning sponsorship money, blocking her emails, and threatening to post doctored footage of her having a breakdown. We acted fast. In 72 hours, we coordinated with a legal contact in Japan, issued a digital lockout, froze joint accounts, and recovered over $140,000 in lost income. We set her up with a new manager, female-led, trauma-informed, and reconnected her with her brand partners. Reiko went public 2 weeks later. I didn't think anyone would believe me, she said in her video. But Root didn't just believe me. They helped me. They saved me. And when I watched her thank us, her voice trembling, I remembered every moment I sat on my kitchen floor, wondering if Valentina's backup account would even survive the week. We'd come so far. And I was more certain than ever that we weren't done. One afternoon, I got a text from Marin. Times asterisk, you've been invited to testify before the Digital Oversight Committee. Asterisk. I blinked. I read it again. Testify. The committee was holding hearings on creator protections, how algorithms, platforms, and contracts had evolved faster than the laws meant to govern them. And they wanted me, to sit in front of Congress and explain why a personal story had become a public crisis. Valentina called that night. You're gonna do it, right? I don't know. Cassie. Her voice was gentle. You've done more in a year than half the people on that panel have done in a lifetime. You have to. I exhaled. What if I'm not ready? You were ready the minute you refused to stay erased. So I went. Hair tied back, no makeup, a black suit that made me feel like my bones were made of iron. I sat down behind the mic, adjusted the nameplate, sipped water. The room was silent. And I told them everything. Not just about Valentina, not just about the hack, but about the culture of silence, about the systemic erasure, about the way creators, especially women, are both product and brand, and too often target. When I finished, there were tears in the audience. One congresswoman stood. I was erased once too, she said, not from the internet, but from a narrative. Thank you for building a place where erasure is no longer inevitable. Quote, legislation didn't pass that day, but language changed. And that was how laws begin. Meanwhile, Root's reach kept growing. We built Dige of the Signal, a platform for whistleblowers inside talent agencies. We launched Dige Brup Size, a peer-to-peer alert system for unusual login activity. We even partnered with therapists to offer trauma recovery programs tailored to digital burnout and online harassment. But the most powerful change happened quietly. One morning, I walked into HQ and saw a girl sitting in the lobby, young, nervous, clutching a sketch pad. She looked up. Hi, she said. I don't have an appointment. But I read your story. I thought maybe I could help. I smiled. What can you do? She opened her sketch pad, showed me mock-ups of what would become Root's next campaign. She was 17, self-taught, scared, and brilliant. We hired her on the spot. Because that's what we were building. Not a company. A home. For stories. For voices. For survivors. For people who refused to stay silent. And every time someone asked me how it started, I said the same thing. It started when someone blocked me. They'd always laugh. But I never did. Because it wasn't funny. It was asterisk the moment I realized the cost of silence. And made a promise to never pay it again. Not for myself. Not for anyone. This time, we weren't asking to be heard. We were building the microphone. And turning up the volume. The morning after I testified, I woke up to something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. No phone buzz. No team alerts. No media storms. Just the soft hum of the radiator in my apartment, and the dull gray light of dawn seeping through the windows. I sat up in bed, momentarily unsure of where I was, who I was without adrenaline chasing me out of sleep. The weight I usually carried in my chest, anticipation, urgency, guilt, wasn't gone, but it had shifted. A subtle realignment, like an internal clock, had finally caught up with real time. I padded to the kitchen barefoot, brewed coffee, and opened the windows wide despite the chill. Outside, the city felt new. Not quiet, just possible. Later that morning, I arrived at Root HQ to find something strange on my desk, a small, unmarked envelope. No name, no address. Inside, a single printed photo. Me, Valentina, and our mother, taken 10 years ago in our old backyard, a birthday party. My hand on a homemade cake. Valentina mid-laugh. Mom standing behind us. Her expression something between pride and distance. There was a note on the back written in a hand I didn't recognize. Times asterisk. You never stopped protecting her. She sees it now. So do I. Asterisk. No signature. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't matter who sent it. I knew exactly what it meant. I slipped the photo into the side of my desk organizer and went back to work. The next 2 weeks were some of the most intense we'd faced, not because of backlash, but because we were growing faster than we could organize. Root wasn't a startup anymore. It was a movement with infrastructure, and movements needed vision, clarity, and coordination. I sat with our new strategy lead, Kwame, a former policy director who left Washington to join Root after watching our creator cases shift national conversations. We need to decide, he said bluntly, tapping on his tablet. Are we an advocacy network, a tech organization, or a creative cooperative? I looked at the dry erase board behind him, dotted with arrows, charts, funding flows, user metrics. All three, I said, and a story archive, and a repair ecosystem, and a publishing house. He laughed. So a revolution. Not overnight, but yeah. He leaned back in his chair. Then we need to start acting like one. Over the next few days, we created 4 branches within Root. 1. Root Code, our tech division, building tools for safety, autonomy, and ownership. 2. Root Shield, our advocacy and legal action team. 3. Root Voice, our storytelling and publishing wing. 4. Root Grow, mentorship, wellness, and community resilience. We brought in new leads for each. Real people, survivors, experts, healers. And I stepped fully into the role I'd once run from, executive director. Not because I craved control, because I finally believed I had something worth protecting, with people who believed in protecting it with me. Meanwhile, Valentina, now months into her graceful retreat from the public eye, began working quietly with Root Voice. She didn't want to be the headline anymore, but she wanted to help others shape theirs. She started a writing circle, 5 women, each with their own story of being silenced, erased, or digitally disfigured. I peeked in one evening as they sat in the conference room. Valentina had her legs curled beneath her, a cup of tea in her hand. The others were laughing, really laughing, at something one of them had read aloud. She caught my eye and smiled. For the first time in a long time, it wasn't the smile of someone surviving. It was someone belonging. By the end of the quarter, Root had. Team helped recover over $1.3 million in stolen creator funds. Times reinstated 47 wrongfully deleted accounts. Times intervened in 12 legal cases of digital sabotage. Times launched 2 international alliances with media ethics groups in Sweden and South Africa. Times trained 300-plus creators in self-advocacy. But numbers only told part of the story. The real shift came in language. Agencies were rewriting their contracts to include Times creator recovery clauses. Platforms added dedicated sabotage reporting categories. And a new trend emerged. Influencers publicly crediting their teams, not just managers, but strategists, assistants, moderators. The invisible labor was becoming visible. I got an email one morning from someone named Anahita. Dear Cassie, I'm 17. My mom thinks I'm wasting time online. But I've been running a 200K follower book account for 2 years. It helped me survive a really bad year. I read your story. I listened to every podcast. I used your toolkit to lock my account. I just wanted you to know, because of you, I didn't give up. Thank you. I read it 3 times. Then I forwarded it to the whole team. Subject line, this is why. Later that month, I hosted our first all-hands summit. Every team member, every contractor, every volunteer. We filled an entire old movie theater, repurposed with soundproofing, long tables, and a sign that said, "This isn't a job. It's a rewrite." I took the stage and said the only thing that still felt true, even after all this time. I didn't set out to lead a movement. I just refused to be erased. I could barely hear the applause over the pounding in my chest. Afterward, a few members of the early Discord crew found me by the popcorn machine. Priya hugged me. Julian cried. Veronica handed me a USB. "What's this?" I asked. "A backup," she said, "of your first Slack call, the day you took over." I swallowed hard. I thought we lost it. "You saved us," she said. "We made sure not to lose you." That night, I sat alone in my apartment, plugged in the USB, and listened. My voice, shaky, determined, saying, "We'll fix this, I promise." And we had. Not perfectly, not easily, but together. So when people now asked what Root stood for, I stopped listing services, stats, and missions. I said this: Root is what happens when women refuse to stay erased. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about belonging, about the power of being seen and the responsibility of seeing others, about what comes after the silence. And if you were lucky, if you fought hard enough, long enough, you didn't just get your voice back. You found an entire choir waiting. It was autumn when the first major lawsuit came. Not against us, but because of us. A creator we'd supported, a popular fashion YouTuber named Serena Moss, had built her entire platform with the help of her ex-boyfriend, who acted as her manager, videographer, editor, and ultimately, gatekeeper. She came to us through Root Tree mentorship, shell-shocked after discovering that he'd signed a string of licensing contracts in her name without her knowledge, spreading her image across ad campaigns in Southeast Asia, some in contexts she would never have consented to. She wanted to go public. We stood with her. She posted a video, showed the evidence, explained everything. What followed was explosive. Millions of views, divided comments, and then the inevitable: he sued her for breach of contract and defamation. But this time, she wasn't alone. Root Shield handled her defense. We coordinated legal experts, forensic audits, crisis PR. Our network spread her story across creators, activists, even attorneys general. When the court ruled in her favor and demanded the contracts be voided due to fraud and coercion, it became a landmark case. Referenced in media law lectures, covered on Legal TikTok, and dissected by industry think tanks. And when she stood on stage at the Root Voice Summit, Serena said, "I never imagined one DM to Root would give me my name back." She wasn't the only one reclaiming things. A week later, I received an invitation to speak at the United Nations World Digital Forum in Geneva. The topic: Resilience and Regulation in the Creator Economy. I stared at the email for 5 minutes. Then I called Valentina. "I think you should do it," she said. I laughed. "No one's asking you to fly across the world and explain international digital ethics." "You'd be surprised," she said softly. "I've had 6 invitations this month. I just told them to talk to you." My stomach flipped. She was quietly handing me the spotlight. Again. And this time I was ready to take it. Geneva was gray when I landed, cold and cloud-wrapped. I wore a coat I'd borrowed from our legal director because I didn't own anything with a belt and shoulder pads. The hotel was glassy, sleek. The conference space all high ceilings and hushed lights. My badge read, Cassandra Monroe, founder, Root Collective. The panel before me was stiff, jargon-heavy, CEOs of legacy tech firms talking about the problem of scale and responsible monetization pathways. My fingers itched. Then they called me up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rehearse, didn't read from notes. I told them how it felt to be erased. To have your name locked behind a login. To wake up and realize your face was on screens, but your voice was gone. I told them about Serena, about Reiko, about Valentina, about how my sister's deletion gave birth to a revolution. And when I finished, the room was silent. Not because they didn't understand, but because they did. After the forum, a Swedish data commissioner approached me. "We're drafting new creator protections," she said. "Would you consult?" I said yes. By the time I flew home, Root had been mentioned in 67 new international outlets. We were no longer just a movement. We were a model. Back in New York, I met with our directors. "It's time we formalize," I said, "not just as a nonprofit, not just as a collective, but as an institute." A beat. Kwame blinked. "You mean like a research institute?" "Research, training, certification, publishing, tools, policy guidance. You want to institutionalize a rebellion. I want to make it last." We restructured. Root Institute launched 6 months later. Our first initiative? The Creator Integrity Standard, a universal ethical framework for creator/manager relationships. It included clauses on Times consent-based representation, Times financial transparency, Times intellectual ownership, Times emergency protocol access. We rolled it out via webinars, toolkits, and industry partnerships. Within 30 days, 4 major talent agencies signed on. The ripple effect was instant. Influencer contract templates began to shift. More creators retained ownership of their brand identities. And, my favorite part, college courses began using Root Institute materials in their digital ethics syllabi. Meanwhile, the unexpected happened. Bryn. After over a year of silence, we received a formal letter from her legal team requesting a meeting. Not a lawsuit. A conversation. Valentina called me first. "Do we even want to?" she asked. I paused. "Yes," I said, "because this was never about vengeance." The meeting was tense. Held at a neutral office in Midtown. No press, no devices. Just Bryn, 2 lawyers, me, and Valentina. She looked older, not aged, but tired in the way people get when they've lived through too many versions of themselves. She didn't apologize. Not directly. But she said, "You were right. I didn't just betray you. I betrayed something I didn't understand." Valentina stared at her. "We trusted you." "I know, and I broke it, but I want to help fix what I broke." She offered to share internal documents from a network she used to work with, the same one now being investigated for systematic manipulation of creator algorithms and payouts. Valentina looked at me. I nodded. We accepted. Not as friends. but as allies, briefly aligned. Because this wasn't about personal wounds anymore. It was about a system cracking open. And the more light we let in, the more we could change. In the months that followed, Root helped. Times draft 5 pieces of creator protection legislation. Times train 1,200 creators in self-advocacy and digital recovery. Times launch Root Labs, an incubator for survivor-led creator startups. And for me, I began writing. Not reports, not pitches, but a book. A memoir, yes, but also a roadmap. Titled, When They Tried to Erase Her. Because that's what this had always been. Not a startup story. Not a tech story. But a story about the violence of silence and what it costs to reclaim your voice. When I submitted the first draft, my editor cried. When I handed Valentina the galley copy, she read it in one night. Then she sent me a one-line text. Try submit it takes. Try submit it takes. Try submit it. Try submit it takes. Try submit it. Try submit it takes. Try submit it takes. Try six submit it takes. Try submit it takes. Try submit it takes. And that was all I needed. Because I didn't start this journey to win. I started because I couldn't stay erased. Now I was everywhere. But more importantly, so were Tui Sant. 6 months after launching the Root Institute, I found myself in a quiet cabin in upstate New York, standing in front of a wood-burning stove, trying to figure out how to stop thinking in bullet points. I'd come here alone. No Wi-Fi, no cell reception, no team. Just me, a stack of handwritten letters from creators across the world, and the final manuscript of my book, printed out on paper, 312 double-spaced pages heavy. I hadn't taken a break since the day Valentina's account disappeared. Even when we won. Even when we grew. Even when we were celebrated. I stayed on. Relentless. Determined. Scared, in a way that if I stopped moving, the whole thing might collapse. But now I had to stop. Not because I was tired. Because I needed to listen. The wind outside whispered through the cracks in the window frames. I poured coffee from an old tin percolator, sat on the floor by the fire, and opened the letters one by one. There were dozens, some typed, some handwritten, some translated from languages I didn't even recognize. All of them answered a question I had never publicly asked. What does it feel like to reclaim your voice? One woman from Nigeria wrote, "It felt like sewing my own name back onto the world." A trans creator from Brazil wrote, "It felt like leaving a locked room I didn't know I was in." A grandmother in rural France said, "It felt like watching my granddaughter look me in the eyes and say, 'I see you.'" I cried, not in one big breakdown, but in waves. Little leaks of something I hadn't made space for. Pride. Grief. Awe. When I returned to New York 3 days later, I walked into HQ differently. Not faster, not bolder, just steadier. Our team had grown to over 70 full-time staff, with another 200 contractors across legal, tech, wellness, and education. We had 7 global chapters. The United Nations had adopted parts of our Creator Integrity Standard. And Valentina, quietly, brilliantly, had published her first collection of essays. She titled it, Nice Muted, Nice. The cover was just a gray square with a single pink dot in the corner. It broke every design rule and sold out its first printing in 48 hours. One afternoon, she walked into my office holding a rolled-up poster. "Found this in a bookstore in Brooklyn," she said, unfurling it. It was the full timeline of the Reclaim Project, from the first account deletion to the Institute's founding. At the bottom, in block letters, "This is how you undelete a life." We both laughed. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" "When it was just us, fighting to get the backup account running, staying up all night eating cereal and yelling at Slack." "Sometimes," I said, "but I don't miss the fear." "Me neither." We stood there in silence for a moment. Then she said, "I want to start a school." I blinked. "What kind of school?" A place where girls learn what we didn't get to learn until it was almost too late. Not just tech or safety, but voice, legacy, digital authorship. I felt something click. Root Academy? I whispered. She nodded. Let's build it. The announcement broke the internet. We partnered with 3 NGOs and 2 global education coalitions. Root Academy would launch in 5 cities as a pilot: New York, Nairobi, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, and Warsaw. Each location would be tailored to the needs of local creators, led by regional directors from within the Root network. The curriculum would cover times digital security, times storytelling and platform ethics, times contract literacy, times emotional resilience, * community strategy. But most importantly, it would be free, accessible, and safe. Applications opened. In 48 hours, we had over 18,000. And we hadn't even advertised. The world was hungry for what we were building. And I finally believed that what we were doing wasn't just intervention. It was inheritance. On the eve of the first Academy session, Valentina and I stood in the courtyard of the new campus in Brooklyn, a sun-drenched, graffiti-painted converted warehouse. The first cohort was inside, laughing, meeting, dreaming. She turned to me and said, "You know what's wild?" "What?" "If you hadn't gotten that message from Bryn that day, if she hadn't erased me, none of this would exist." I looked at her. "No," I said. "If you hadn't trusted me after everything, Stums, none of this would exist." We hugged. Not tight, not tearful. Just solid, real. And I thought about the quiet mornings. The fear, the fight, the recovery. All of it had led here. Not to revenge. Not to power. But to * remaking the world. Not for ourselves, but for the ones who would come next. As the doors to Root Academy opened and the students poured out into the courtyard, one girl caught my eye. She was tall, nervous, holding a sketchbook. She looked at me like she knew exactly who I was. And in that moment, I saw it. A future I didn't need to control. Just protect. Because the voice I reclaimed didn't belong to me alone anymore. It belonged to everyone who ever felt like they were one click away from disappearing. And now? We were louder than ever. The opening month of Root Academy was unlike anything we'd ever done. Every morning, the Brooklyn campus came alive with a rhythm that felt more like a movement than a school. Laughter echoing through the stairwells, laptops opening like blossoms on shared tables, coffee brewing in small corners while lessons began with real, lived questions. No grades. No rows of desks. Just space. Structure without suffocation. Curriculum with a pulse. I taught the Monday session on * digital sovereignty. * a term that had started showing up in policy debates, but rarely got translated into everyday language. For us, it meant this: you own your story or someone else will. That morning, I watched 18-year-old Janelle, a quiet student from the Bronx who rarely spoke above a whisper, stand up and read her first essay aloud. My ex built my follower count and told me I owed him my password. I gave it to him. When we broke up, he told people I was just a character he created. He said I didn't exist without him. He's wrong. This is my voice. This is my real name. And it's mine again. The room was still. Then someone clapped. Then everyone. And Janelle sat down with tears on her cheeks and power in her spine. That was week 1. By week 3, the global cohort videos began rolling in, classrooms in Nairobi discussing post-colonial erasure in digital spaces. A Warsaw workshop on influencer taxation ethics. A panel in Sao Paulo, hosted entirely by teen creators mapping the ethics of brand collaborations. Every video ended with the same 3 words: Naza Root runs deep. That became the new motto. Not planned, not branded, just truth. Valentina was radiant in those weeks. She wasn't front and center. She was everywhere quietly, sitting beside students on the floor, editing essays, bringing tea, sometimes just listening. She smiled more. laughed without apologizing. One night after our weekly strategy session, we walked to the roof. The sky was purple-black and full of breath. "I have a question," she said. "Shoot. If you could go back to the moment I blocked you, would you still fight for me?" I didn't hesitate. Every time. She looked away, blinking quickly. "Even after what I said, what I didn't say, what I believed about you." "You were surviving," I said. "We both were. You needed someone to hold the line, and I did." She didn't answer, but she reached for my hand. And we stood like that, fingers laced, as the city moved below. 2 weeks later, we hit our first serious breach. Not digital, physical. Someone broke into the Mumbai Root Academy branch. Nothing stolen, no damage. But the servers were unplugged. Every screen was turned inward, facing the walls. And on one whiteboard, in red marker, it's a sign bio No1 owns truth. We took it seriously. We ramped up on-site security, hired a new global director of resilience, and I flew out to Mumbai personally. I walked the halls with our team there, saw the fear in their eyes, even though they tried to hide it. But I also saw something else. Resolve. "These girls aren't going home," one local educator told me. "They're scared, but they've never been safer in their lives, because here, they're not alone." We installed new servers, built redundancies, doubled the wellness staff. And we hosted an all-school assembly where I said something I hadn't written down. "If you threaten our light, we won't dim it. We'll build more lamps." They stood for that. The breach made headlines. Some critics said Root was getting too bold. Others said we were inspiring a digital class war. One op-ed accused us of radicalizing creators into collective labor consciousness. We printed that line on our next batch of tote bags. The truth, we said, were said radical. Not in rage, in swore hope. We believed in a world where girls weren't ghost-written by their handlers, where contracts weren't traps, where stories couldn't be deleted without consequence. In October, we held our first Root World Congress. Over 1,200 attendees from 42 countries. Keynotes, panels, workshops, story circles, and one empty chair on every stage to honor the ones who never got their voice back. At the closing ceremony, Valentina read a poem. "They called me silent, but I was just pausing. They called me fragile, but I was rebuilding. They tried to erase me, but they didn't know. I'd memorized every letter of my name." People stood, cried, sang, and as the lights dimmed, I whispered into the mic, "This isn't the climax. This is the blueprint." Root wasn't just surviving. It was evolving. A month later, a global talent agency reached out with a proposal to make Root Academy's ethics course mandatory source for all new creator signings. We said yes, on the condition that Root receive full editorial oversight. They agreed. Then, a university in South Korea partnered with us to adapt our curriculum for digital humanities. Then UNESCO. Then a dozen public libraries across North America. Everywhere we looked, the world was shifting. And all because a backup account was born the day a sister refused to let another sister disappear. One night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, reading a new batch of letters. One was from a girl in Ohio. She wrote, "I had no followers, no audience. But when my stepbrother tried to leak my poetry and claim it as his, I found Root. I found you. I took my name back. I printed it. And I tattooed it on my wrist. Not for attention. For memory." I closed my eyes. And I let the silence hold me. Because this was more than victory. It was belonging. It was legacy. It was love, coded, captioned, and unstoppable. And we were just getting started. By the time winter folded over New York, the word Root had become more than a name. It was a verb, a badge, a kind of quiet resistance, threaded into the way thousands of creators now moved through the world. We heard it whispered in subway cars. "She's rooted." We saw it scribbled on campus walls. Root me before I get erased. It became a movement you didn't need permission to join. You just had to refuse to disappear. But with growth came strain. And at the end of that year, everything nearly broke. It started quietly. Our financial director flagged anomalies in the Root Grow disbursement logs. Small amounts at first, then bigger. Grants issued without application IDs. Vendor payments rerouted through obscure shell accounts. Over $340,000 unaccounted for. The investigation revealed what we least expected. The breach came from inside. A beloved early team member, someone we trusted, someone who'd slept on office couches and cheered at every summit, had been siphoning funds for nearly 7 months. She didn't vanish. She confessed. Through tears, through shaking hands, through a 10-page letter left on my desk the day the audit concluded. I believed in this place. I just didn't believe it would survive long enough to pay us what we were worth. I was afraid. And I didn't ask. I took. Her name was Lillian. She had designed our original Root Tree logo, led the Nairobi pilot, brought us snacks during our first 20-hour work sprints. I couldn't breathe. I sat in the conference room, hands folded in front of me, and read her letter 3 times before calling a full leadership emergency. Kwame looked at me from across the table, his voice low. "Do we report this?" "Of course," I said. "We have to." Valentina nodded quietly. "But we handle it the way we promised we would handle everything. With transparency, not cruelty." The next morning, we published a statement. Root had suffered an internal breach. A team member had misused funds. Legal measures were being taken. Systems were being audited. And our community would be informed every step of the way. No names, no shame campaign, no viral blame. Just truth. The response shocked us. Not outrage. Gratitude. People thanked us for not pretending perfection, for showing that accountability doesn't require spectacle. We recovered most of the funds within 60 days. We implemented dual auth verification across every payment stream. And we created a new position, Director of Ethical Culture. Lillian never reached out again. But she didn't try to run. She cooperated. And when the consequences came, she accepted them. That month was the hardest of my leadership. Not because of the breach, because it reminded me that the thing we were building was fragile. Not weak, but undercity alive. And living things bleed when broken. The board considered stepping in. Some donors paused funding. Our community waited. And I did the only thing I knew how to do. I stood up. I spoke. In a live stream from our Brooklyn campus, I looked into the camera and said, "We failed at protecting something sacred, but we did not fail in who we are. Root is not a brand, it is a bond, and we will strengthen it, not by pretending, but by repairing." The screen flooded with hearts, with comments, with belief, and we moved forward. In the new year, we launched Truth Rise, a mentorship ladder for young survivors of digital erasure to transition into leadership. We introduced The Shield Wall, a creator defense coalition with on-call legal aid in 6 languages. We released our TAMS annual transparency ledger, publishing every dollar received, spent, and tracked. And then, something new happened. A platform, not a creator, came to us. A tech startup called Beamlink, focused on decentralized media distribution, wanted to partner, not to sponsor. To adopt Root's ethical guidelines as part of their terms of service. I flew to Oakland for the meeting. Their CEO was a 28-year-old queer Pakistani-American named Sammy, who had watched Valentina's interview years ago and never forgotten it. "I never thought I'd run a company," Sammy said, "but I knew the next generation of tools had to be built on values, not virality." We signed a partnership within 2 weeks. And just like that, Root's philosophy became coded into tech architecture. Meanwhile, Valentina quietly began work on her second book. Title: The Backup Account. A hybrid memoir and reflection on digital identity, betrayal, and legacy. She let me read the prologue one night. It opened with a single line. The day my sister became my firewall, I remembered my name. I closed the document and cried. She just handed me tea and didn't say a word. That spring, we celebrated Root's 3rd anniversary with a summit called Roots of Tomorrow. 5 days, 10 cities, 40 panels, and one final keynote. Mine. I stood on the Brooklyn stage again, where it all began, and told the story one more time. From the first deletion to the last recovery. I ended with this. You don't need 1 million followers to reclaim your voice. You just need to believe that silence is not your final form. Root is not just a home. It's a heartbeat. And as long as we're here, no one disappears alone. The lights dimmed. And the entire room, everyone, stood. Not for applause, but for each other. Because this wasn't my story anymore. It belonged to all of us. And it was just beginning again. The summer Root turned 4, I stopped using the word leader. Not because I was stepping down, but because the word had started to feel off. Like I was implying something vertical, like I stood at the top while others followed. And that was never what this was. I began saying, steward. Not cheerite stomps. Because that's what I was now, a caretaker of something larger than myself, a pulse keeper, a builder of rooms I would never sit in. Root no longer fit into a single sentence. We were a global network, an institute, a school, a collective, a think tank, a sanctuary. We were also a publishing house now, and a policy engine, and a design studio that partnered with creators to develop independent branding that they owned. But the heart of it was still the same. Refusal. Refusal to vanish. Refusal to let others be erased. Refusal to believe that silence is ever the end of the story. We had reached 100,000 active community members. Published 37 creator recovery guides in 14 languages. Filed our first international lawsuit against an agency that ghost managed over 50 creators without contracts. And we had just opened our 10th Root Academy campus in Bogota. Valentina and I stood at the opening ceremony, watching young creators scrawl promises on a huge chalk wall. I will not apologize for taking up space. Snaim, my story matters even if it doesn't trend. I am not your content. I am a creator, Snaim. She reached over, handed me a piece of chalk. Your turn, she said. I stared at the blank spot between 2 declarations. Then wrote. This is what healing looks like. We flew home the next day, jet-lagged and quiet. But I felt something in my chest I hadn't in years. Completion. Not the end, but a breath. A pause. That fall, Valentina announced she was taking a full sabbatical from Root. She called me into the old podcast studio to tell me. The lights were off. Just us and the hum of the city. I need to disappear, she said, on purpose this time. I nodded. She smiled. You're not going to talk me out of it? No, because you don't owe the world your constant availability. She left. 2 weeks later, no social post, no newsletter. Just a handwritten note taped to her office door. Thank you for remembering me when I forgot myself. I'm going to go find out who I am without being watched. The office was quiet after that. Her absence was strange, but not empty. It made space. And others stepped into it. Young leaders. Voices we'd once protected. Now rising on their own. One of them was Janelle, the girl who'd read her story aloud in the very first Root Academy cohort. She was now a coordinator for Roottree. She emailed me late one night. Cassie, I'm thinking about applying for the Global Director Fellowship. Too much? Too soon? I wrote back one line. It's time. She was elected unanimously. And I sat at the back of the room during her first all-hands speech, watching her take the mic, watching people lean in, not because she was famous, but because she was familiar. She told them the story of how her ex tried to erase her, and how Root helped her write a new beginning. But I didn't just get saved, she said. I got rebuilt. And now I get to do that for someone else. That's what legacy really is. Not being remembered, but being multiplied. I nearly cried. Instead, I clapped. Harder than anyone. That winter, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, I thought you'd want to know. It was from Lillian, the woman who'd once betrayed us. She'd completed her court-ordered financial reparations, had started volunteering for a small grassroots project working with incarcerated women rebuilding their digital lives. And she had launched a microfund for creators with criminal records trying to build again. I'm not writing to ask for anything, she wrote. I'm writing to thank you for not turning me into a cautionary tale. You gave me a consequence, but also dignity, and I've tried to make good with it. Quote, I stared at the screen. Then I forwarded the email to Valentina. She replied in less than 10 minutes. **, closure, Grace. Let's keep going. And that was the thing. We were never chasing justice in a way that burned people down. We were building a world where people could return. Root was now home to more than just survivors. It was home to those learning to stop surviving, to start belonging. We ended the year with a letter from one of our oldest members. I joined Root after my husband used my account to impersonate me for months. I lost everything. But then I found you, and now I tell new creators, if they try to disappear you, start over, but this time, start loud. I printed that line, taped it above my desk, read it every morning, because this wasn't my fight anymore. It belonged to everyone we'd rooted. Everyone who'd once been invisible. Everyone who now stood, unmistakably, in their own light. And I finally understood. When I said I'd fight for my sister's voice, I didn't know it would echo this far. I didn't know that one deletion would become a declaration. I didn't know that silence could teach me how to shout. But I know now. And I will never forget it. The 5th anniversary of Root didn't begin with a gala. It began with a knock on my door. I was home alone, barefoot, eating cold pad thai straight from the container and watching a video from our latest Root Academy cohort in Manila. A girl named Salma was explaining how she had built a safe space for Muslim creators who were routinely silenced in mainstream partnerships. And then, the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there she was. Valentina. Hair longer, clothes looser, eyes quieter. She looked rested. I didn't speak. I just stepped aside and let her in. We sat on the floor, no words exchanged for a solid minute. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a thumb drive. I made something, she said. It was a film, 47 minutes long, unpolished, raw, stitched from phone footage, DMs, interviews, voice memos. A documentary titled, The Voice Was Never Lost. She narrated it. Quietly, but with a spine of steel. It told the story from her side, from the fog, the manipulation, the self-doubt. How Bryn's betrayal hadn't felt like a betrayal at first. How easy it had been to believe the lie that she needed to distance herself from me to survive. She didn't villainize anyone. She just told the truth. And at the end, she said, I thought I had to be perfect to deserve my name back. But my sister never asked for that. She just held the door open. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just reached across the floor and took her hand. We uploaded the film to Root's private community archive that night. It wasn't meant to go viral, but it did. Because real things always do. Within 24 hours, we had 500 requests to screen it in classrooms, shelters, workshops. The New York Times called it a quiet revolution in digital memoir. A university in Mexico City designed a curriculum around it. And a girl in Morocco wrote us, I showed this to my aunt. She cried. She said, finally, someone understands what I lost. The 5-year summit became a celebration not of what we built, but what we made possible. We hosted 15 satellite events across 12 countries. Janelle opened the Brooklyn gathering. She wore a deep green blazer and spoke with a stillness that filled the room. We often talk about reclaiming our voice, she said, but some of us never knew we had one. Root didn't just give me a mic, it taught me how to sing. We laughed. We cried. We danced. And when Valentina finally stepped on stage, the crowd went silent. She didn't read a speech. She just said, "Some of you knew me before I fell. Some of you only know me from the wreckage, but all of you helped me get back up. This story is yours now. Thank you for not closing the book when I went missing." Afterward, someone in the crowd shouted, "We highlighted that chapter." The whole room erupted. The next morning, I found myself back at HQ, sorting through letters, donations, and something new, applications. Hundreds. From teachers, high school educators, literacy coaches, librarians, all asking to join Root not as participants, but as facilitators. They wanted to teach what we'd created. Not in addition to their work, times A's their work. So we launched Root EDU, a certification and curriculum framework designed to integrate Root's philosophies into formal education. Story sovereignty, digital resilience, platform ethics, online identity as part of civic literacy. We trained 300 educators in the first 3 months. And those classrooms, those teenagers, began shifting language. A 16-year-old in Vancouver created a browser plugin called Ainun Ghost, which alerts users when a platform changes their privacy settings. A class in Beirut designed a mural that read, "You can't erase a root." And in Kansas, a 10th grade English teacher wrote, "My students don't just want to write essays anymore. They want to write records. They say, if I'm going to be searchable, I want to be unforgettable." Valentina and I watched it all from our rooftop one evening, wrapped in blankets, sipping tea. "You ever think we went too far?" she asked. I shook my head. "We didn't go far enough, but the ones who come next will." She smiled. "And we'll be behind them." We stayed quiet a while. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. "I think I want to step away, not just sabbatical, really step away." I looked at her. "You sure?" She nodded. "I got my voice back, but now it belongs to other stories. I think I want to work with girls offline, build silence into safety, not always amplify. Just listen." I felt a pang, but also a peace. She wasn't retreating. She was rooting herself somewhere new. We announced her transition publicly a week later. She gave one final interview. The last question, "What do you hope Root becomes?" Her answer, "Unnecessary." The interviewer blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I hope we raise a generation that doesn't need to reclaim their voices because no one tries to take them in the first place." It was perfect. She left quietly after that. No party, no fanfare. Just a note in the team Slack. "Cassie knows where I am if you need me. Be bold, be kind. Be louder than silence." And she was gone. I sat with that for days. Then I went back to work. Because there were still creators being erased. Still contracts to untangle. Still stories to protect. But now when people ask me who I was, I didn't say founder, or director, or strategist. I said, calm sister who refused to stop writing. Because that's what saved us. Not a business plan, not a viral campaign, but a refusal to let the story end in silence. And now? Now we were a chorus, and the world was finally listening. The morning I stepped down, it was raining. Not dramatically, just the kind of gentle, persistent rain that softens everything, like the sky itself had finally exhaled. I walked to Root HQ with no umbrella, soaked to the knees by the time I reached the doors. No fanfare, no press. Just me, a reusable tote with a few notebooks, and the feeling in my chest, like I was finally returning something I'd been carrying for too long. Inside, Janelle was waiting. Her eyes met mine. No surprise, no panic, just knowing. "You sure?" she asked. I smiled. As sure as I was the day I changed the password to Valentina's backup account. She laughed. We walked together into the atrium, where the entire staff was gathered, not because I told them, but because they felt it. I didn't give a long speech. I just said, I was never supposed to lead this forever. I was just the one who refused to stop the story when it got quiet. Now it's louder than I ever dreamed. And I trust the hands it's in. They clapped. But no one cried. Because this wasn't an ending. It was an inheritance. I left them with a box of handwritten notes, one for every person who'd stayed through at least one full year. Inside each note, a story only they would remember. A moment. A fight. A laugh in the middle of collapse. Because leadership is memory. And I wanted them to know they had mine. I walked out in the rain, again. This time, I wore the coat Valentina had given me on her last day in the office. Inside the lining, she'd sewn one phrase. Your silence was never empty. For a week, I didn't log in. Didn't write. Didn't plan. I stayed in my apartment, read fiction, ate warm things, watered the neglected basil on my windowsill. And then the letters started arriving. From students. From mothers. From creators who'd never spoken publicly. All saying some version of, you made space. Can I make some too? One letter, in particular, was from a girl named Isa in Paraguay. My account was deleted after my father found out I was writing under a pseudonym about being queer. I didn't try to get it back, I just stopped writing. But then I found a clip of you reading your manifesto. You said if they silence you once, they'll do it again. But if you write loud enough, someone else will keep your voice moving. So I started again, this time with my name. Thank you. I cried over that one. Then I got to work. Not for Root. For the future. I launched Stay Written, a new project focused solely on authorship. Not content. Not platforms. But the act of writing yourself into the world. It was a quiet initiative. Just a newsletter, a podcast, a few workshops at small community centers. But it grew. By spring, Stay Written had over 10,000 subscribers. Then, 50,000. We partnered with an indigenous language preservation project in the Philippines. We hosted a storytelling camp in rural Maine for creators over 60. We built a cross-generational writing circle where elders and teenagers shared one digital document, trading lines back and forth. It was slow, beautiful, real, and it reminded me why I started in the first place. Then, one afternoon, Janelle called. I have something for you, she said. She sent over a private recording from the most recent Root graduation. A girl named Mahira, 14, stood at the mic. My mother tried to keep me off the internet. She said it was too dangerous, too cruel. But then one night, she showed me a documentary called The Voice Was Never Lost. And she said, if you do speak, speak like her. She pointed to a printout of me taped to the whiteboard. I don't want to be Cassie, she said. But I want to write like someone who refuses to disappear. I watched that recording in my kitchen, knees pulled to my chest, the city humming outside. Then I opened a new document. Typed the words, the backup account was just the beginnings, Samal. Because it was. It always was. We were never saving just one voice. We were creating a world where stories are armor, where girls aren't platforms, they're publishers, where silence is honored, but never mistaken for consent. I never returned to Root as a leader, but they made me a chair of legacy projects. Mostly symbolic, sometimes strategic, always sacred. And on the wall of every new campus, Nairobi, Atlanta, Seoul, Amsterdam, there's a plaque that reads, Cassie Monroe. She didn't go viral. She went home. And then she built one for everyone else. Valentina visits sometimes. She still teaches once a year under a pseudonym. Off the grid, no cameras, just voice. And when people ask where she is, I say, she's where the silence became safe. That's what we always wanted. Not fame, not followers, but the right to stay written, to stay real, to stay rooted. And now, we are. Forever.